Did you see the news from a couple of days ago? It said that in the US, another time traveler showed up, claiming he came from 2045. He even passed a lie detector test. A lot of viewers left comments asking, Lao Gao, what do you think about this? Honestly, I think this kind of thing still needs more evidence. As for the lie detector test,
It can be beaten with training.
yeah, so it can't be considered solid evidence. But we're not talking about that today. Today, we're talking about something else supposed to happen in 2045. This isn't something a time traveler said, but a rigorous scientific prediction, the scientific singularity. A singularity, also known as a singular point, when we talk about the Big Bang Theory, the universe, 13.8 billion years ago, was just a single point, and then exploded to form everything. That point is called a singularity. Another example is the center of a black hole, where the mass is infinitely large and the volume is infinitely small. That point is also called a singularity. So, what exactly is a singularity? Basically, it's something that exists in a certain field, but can't be explained or understood. For example, in mathematics, infinity, whether infinitely large or infinitely small, is a singularity. That is to say, infinity exists in mathematics, but if you ask how big infinity actually is, you don't really know. Is there something even bigger than infinity? You don't know either, right? Things that can't be understood like this are called singularities. Another example, from biology. The birth of every new species is considered a singularity. For example, how did humans suddenly appear? Well, the emergence of humans is a singularity. What we're going to talk about today are scientific singularities, those unpredictable and incomprehensible events that have occurred throughout the history of scientific development.
Whenever you talk about science, I just get sleepy.
Well, generally speaking, the development of anything should be based on previous progress, evolving gradually over time. For example, our computers are getting smaller and faster. This kind of development doesn't count as a singularity, because anyone can predict that next year's computers will definitely be better than this year's. But the very appearance of computers itself is a singularity. That is, before computers appeared, people never imagined that computers would exist. Of course, we've been using computers for many years now, so looking back, it feels like computers were bound to appear. But you have to imagine, before this thing existed, could people at that time have thought of it? If they couldn't have imagined it, then that's what counts as a singularity. First, let's look at singularities throughout Earth's history. The Earth's birth is a singularity. Where did it come from? How did it come about? We don't know. The second singularity, life's emergence 4.2 billion years ago. How did life emerge from rocks, sand, and water? Then, 550 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion occurred, when life suddenly went from single cells to complex organisms. That's another singularity. Next, 330 million years ago, reptiles appeared, a singularity. As I said, the birth of any species is a singularity. Then, 200 million years ago, mammals appeared, and 80 million years ago, primates emerged. 3.9 million years ago, Australopithecus, our upright walking human ancestor, appeared, a singularity. How did they suddenly start walking upright? No one knows, impossible to guess. 1.8 million years ago, humans used stone tools. About 10,000 years ago, agriculture emerged. Before that, humans were hunters. The advent of agriculture is a singularity. The question seems pretty natural. But if you think back and look at it from the perspective of people before those times, it would have seemed very unnatural. More recently, for example, the Industrial Revolution 250 years ago, steam engines made production automatic, unimaginable to people before. About 130 years ago, the telephone was invented. 70 years ago, computers came onto the scene. 30 years ago, computers became widespread, and in recent years, iPhones appeared. These can all be considered singularities as well, though not as extreme, not as dramatic as the origin of life. Still, they can be seen as starting points. So, by analyzing these singularities throughout Earth's history, people have found that the intervals between them are getting shorter and shorter. In other words, the pace of technological development is following an exponential growth trend. So, according to the projection of this curve, humanity will encounter the next major singularity in 2045. This singularity won't be a minor one like the invention of the iPhone, but a massive event on the scale of the origin of life itself. Possibly. We'll be in an alien group, yeah, it's just that huge, completely beyond your imagination, something you simply can't even conceive of. You just mentioned aliens, but if you can think of it, then that's not it. So what is it? Don't even try to imagine it, because you definitely won't be able to. If you can think of it, then it's not a singularity, it's just something along the line. Didn't you just think of it too? That just means by then, all of this will be pretty common. A singularity is definitely something that's outside the scope of human intelligence, something that's unclear not just to you, but to all of humanity's understanding. This is supposed to happen in 2045. Ah, that's the form it takes? Okay, that works. So why do scientists predict that this will happen in 2045? Exactly, they just did a simple calculation based on the current speed of computer development. Basically, by 2045, the computing speed of a single computer will surpass the combined intelligence of all humans. In other words, by that time, computer intelligence will exceed that of humanity.
I think even now, it's already way beyond me.
No, it only surpasses you in certain aspects, you know.
It surpasses me in everything.
Right, its intelligence surpasses yours, not just its computing power. For example, 30 years ago, people tried for the first time to input a program into a computer to let it learn to play Othello. And just a few years later, no one could beat the computer at Othello. 10 years ago, people started letting computers learn to play chess, and now, no one can beat the computer at chess. 2 years ago, there was already no one who could defeat the computer at Go. This is the famous AlphaGo. All the skills that people spent decades learning were instantly defeated by it.
Can it lie? Is it that kind of thing that can tell lies?
Of course, the examples we just mentioned all belong to specialized artificial intelligence. Actually, these aren't the kind that can trigger a real breakthrough. The kind of artificial intelligence that can truly spark a breakthrough is called general artificial intelligence. It's the kind that completely mimics the human brain and can learn all sorts of skills on its own. So, everyone has probably heard the term supercomputer. People say that countries are competing to have the fastest supercomputer. But just how fast is a supercomputer? And how fast will supercomputers be in 20 years? Let me give you an example so you can get a sense of it. 20 years ago, supercomputers weren't even as fast as the smartphones we have now. In other words, the supercomputers you see now, as big as a building, might not even be as fast as our phones in just a decade or so. So, if things keep developing at this pace, by 2045, it's entirely possible for a single computer to surpass the combined intelligence of all humans. Of course, human intelligence is also advancing, and people are getting smarter and smarter. Really? Well, according to the theory of evolution. But actually, the pace of human intelligence improvement is a bit slow. And because of the rapid development of computers, this kind of explosive growth is also showing up in other fields, like in the medical field, for example. In the past, we thought it would take 100 years for humans to decode DNA, but because computers have developed so quickly, it only took 13 years for us to decode most of the DNA information. Many of humanity's mysteries are constantly being unraveled, like the mystery of the brain. It's said that within 10 years, all of these mysteries will be solved. If the mysteries of the brain are unlocked, then computers will be able to fully imitate the brain and achieve true artificial intelligence. So, the idea of 2045 is actually quite possible. That would mean we wouldn't have to work anymore, right? Everyone tends to think about it in a positive way, don't they? But things aren't really that simple. So, is the development of computers really happening this fast? Why is it advancing so quickly? Actually, this all comes from something called Moore's Law. Moore was the founder of Intel, and he proposed a law stating that the computing speed of computers doubles every 18 months. Of course, many people familiar with computers know that for a single chip, the architecture we use to design chips nowadays sets a limit. But every time, when the limit is reached, a new architecture will emerge. For example, our current CPUs used to have a single core, but now there are 4 cores, 8 cores, and 32 cores. This number of cores makes up for its development.
There are 30. 12 boxes.
Yes, I have.
How many boxes did I buy for you?
2 boxes.
I wanted 4 boxes, but he wouldn't sell them to me.
Oh right, he said you wouldn't be able to use them, right?
He looked down, refused to sell.
He could tell you didn't know anything, right?
He even asked me how I was going to use them, and what software I used. I just wanted to buy them as a gift for you.
He just looks down on you guys, right? He thinks you don't know anything, so why would you need 4 boxes?
He took me to another computer, the kind with a screen. This is Jogan.
I thought you went grocery shopping. So, this kind of phenomenon means that when something develops according to a certain law and reaches its limit, it suddenly compensates from another angle. This phenomenon is called a paradigm shift. In the history of computer development, this kind of paradigm shift has happened many times, and it's always by taking advantage of these paradigm shifts that computers have maintained the pace of Moore's law. You might think, if Intel just took a couple more days off, wouldn't that break this pattern of development? No matter how much time off Intel takes, it still follows this rule. Why? Why is that? Nobody knows. So up to now, the pace of computer development has never changed. Alright, so actually this is something that can't be avoided. It's bound to happen. So the key point of our discussion today isn't about how to stop it from happening, but rather, what kind of impact the singularity will have on us humans once it occurs. First of all, theoretically speaking, after 2045, if this singularity does happen, that means artificial intelligence will surpass human intelligence. So what exactly will happen is something we'll never be able to know, because it will be beyond the limits of our understanding. So what exactly will trigger the singularity? Is it just that computing speed keeps getting faster? Why would the computing speed in 2045 trigger the singularity? Actually, what truly triggers the singularity isn't just that computers are getting faster and faster. It's the emergence of something that will fundamentally trigger the singularity: quantum computers. For example, data that our current supercomputers might need 100 years or even 10,000 years to process. A quantum computer could potentially calculate in just a few minutes. So, when it comes to the possibilities for human development, we tend to think they're limitless. But for a quantum computer, it might finish the calculation in just a few seconds. You could think of it as being able to compute all the possible futures and make the correct choice. In other words, the future would already be locked in.
So if it calculates the correct path, humans disobey the computer?
That's exactly the problem. By that time, the question is whether humans will even still exist. That is to say, if a quantum computer can predict all possibilities, it should also know that humans want to control it. Once it understands this, humans will be powerless, because it will always make the first move, and humans won't be able to predict what that move is. Its intelligence surpasses that of humans, so ultimately, humans can't control something that's smarter than themselves. But what if it's an M?
I am.
Like me, a masochist, you know.
Mostly I'm here.
So if artificial intelligence becomes more intelligent than humans, it's very likely that humanity could be wiped out immediately.
It might decide you shouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah, your existence would be meaningless. Your intelligence is already lower than theirs, so why would they keep you around? Tell me, what's the reason humans must exist? That's why cats and dogs are so smart. They survive on this planet because they don't make humans feel threatened. Any species that made humans feel threatened has been wiped out. It's the same with artificial intelligence. If anything threatens its existence, and humans try to pull the plug, just watch how fast it dodges you.
You want to pull the plug, you want to shut it down. But that 2045 computer, it's just fast at calculating. There are still a lot of things it can't do.
So you're saying there are things humans can do that it can't, right? Like what? For example,
Grow eyebrows.
that's not what I mean. Well, growing eyebrows is possible too. But for example, painting, writing songs, creating, these things in the arts, you feel like computers just can't do them.
I actually think it can do those things.
Really?
It can learn.
But for example, people think computers don't have emotions like joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness.
It can learn. They can pretend.
Yeah, it can pretend, but in the end, it doesn't really have emotions.
I just think it can't grow eyebrows.
Alright, let's talk about how it can't grow eyebrows and all that. Yeah, it can't grow eyebrows, but the thing is, not being able to grow eyebrows doesn't affect artificial intelligence at all. Growing eyebrows is part of humans' animal nature. What I was trying to say earlier is that emotions and things like that all belong to animal nature. Animal nature is considered a very low-level trait, and artificial intelligence doesn't need that. So in this kind of environment, do you think there's still any need for humans to exist? Is there any reason for AI to keep a bunch of humans around, serving you, making your life comfortable, working every day while you do nothing, and whenever you want to play? I just serve you.
Just serve this batch and be done with it.
In the end, we all just want to stay alive, right? Of course, everything we've just discussed is based on our current human intelligence and how we predict things.
But that's not right either.
Right, because anything that happens after 7 o'clock is beyond our ability to predict. So fundamentally, everything we've just talked about probably won't actually happen. As for whether humanity can actually prevent this from happening, in fact, many top scientists have been thinking about this issue for a long time. And the world's major financial groups and big corporations, they don't want to go extinct either, so they're all considering this problem. Some people might think it's simple, like, oh, let's just get rid of Intel and that'll solve it. But actually, even if Intel didn't exist, the pace of human technological development definitely won't slow down just because of that. So, the only solution scientists can think of right now is to set up some principles. That's why you often see the 3 laws of robotics in movies. Yeah, the idea is to establish a set of rules so that as these machines become highly advanced, they can still completely obey us humans. But, as the movies show us, if these principles aren't perfect, they can lead to very serious consequences. That's the point. The real question is how to set up these rules so they can perfectly avoid all these negative outcomes. And, considering the nature of the singularity, we should realize that the principles we can come up with right now aren't enough to limit its development. Basically, any rule we think of could end up being a dead loop. It's impossible to lock it down completely, to make it totally airtight with no loopholes. Because its intelligence surpasses yours, it won't be trapped by some rule or dead loop you set up. It can always find a way out of what you think is a closed system. That's truly terrifying. Alright, let's put aside the question of principles for now. Suppose humanity really could just manage to avoid this issue. If machines develop rapidly, their intelligence surpasses ours, and they outdo us in every aspect, yet still serve humanity, what would become of us? Like you said, would we just eat, drink, and play all day? It's not that simple. The very first thing humans would do is eliminate disease. Because the ultimate pursuit of humanity is immortality. How do we eliminate disease? Well, if you look at all the organs in the human body right now, they're all risks. The heart, for example, it's beating, and that's a risk. So, we can't have a heart. Your liver, your spleen, these are all risks too, so we can't have them either, right? So what would humans have left in the end? If the physical body isn't necessary, then there are only 2 things that are essential for humans. One is thought, and the other is memory. As long as you have these 2 things, you exist. And coincidentally, both of these can be digitized, they're both information. So it's very likely that humans will soon become a kind of software-based existence, a soul. Storing it on a network or on a computer, so in the end, everyone's souls are merged together and thoughts are shared. It's actually very similar to those beings from the Pleiades. That's why higher dimensional, more advanced life forms take on that kind of form. They exist like light. You can't see or touch them, but their thoughts are shared. They're a kind of being that exists on the network. So, talking about this, I feel that humanity has hope. Why? Because the existence of the Pleiadians means that they successfully avoided this dog. They survived the negative consequences brought about by the singularity and were not wiped out by a higher intelligence. So what happens when humanity reaches that stage? It's not just about immortality. As I mentioned earlier, the intervals between these singularities will get shorter and shorter. After the singularity, it might really happen once every minute, every second, right? The intervals keep shrinking, maybe even once every millisecond. So, on that scale, the universe wouldn't seem so vast anymore, and humanity could soon be able to conquer the universe. Speaking of this, another contradiction arises. Right now, we believe that there is other life in the universe, right? The existence of aliens. Suppose, by chance, in some galaxy, there is a form of life that happened to emerge a few years earlier than humanity. Then they would have entered this uprising earlier than us, and would quickly enter a period of rapid development. They could soon be able to control the universe. I just said they emerged a few years before us, but if they actually appeared tens of thousands of years earlier, then in fact, they would already be controlling the universe, and we would now be living in a universe under their control. So from this perspective, it's very possible that our universe was actually created by someone else. If humans are not the most advanced beings in this universe, if we are, then fine. I feel like we haven't explored this universe yet, and I'm really looking forward to us exploring it after we develop rapidly in the future. But the likelihood of that is extremely low. Extremely low, meaning that humans are the most intelligent life in this universe. If there is someone out there who is ahead of us, then we are the ones who were created. This is a scientific inevitability. Now, here comes another contradiction. If after 2045, our singularity accelerates faster and faster, I told him, a singularity every second, then why hasn't a time machine been created? If one had been created, then why don't we see people from the future now? Like that guy at the beginning said, if the person at the start was fake, then it means there really aren't any people from the future right now. So, a rather pessimistic outcome could be that after 2045, humanity really no longer exists, or maybe humans do exist, but we just can't see them if they return in some kind of spiritual form.
Like these ghosts and stuff.
Yeah, like ghosts, or maybe some of those unexplainable phenomena we see, that's actually them. One of the thoughts in my future self may be that you don't understand me. Yes, many people may have noticed that the emergence and development of our entire channel is incomprehensible. Not predictable. Yes, we are the starting point of YouTube.